hell for? You'd think he'd be ready to sell off a portion of that land by now. He's all but lost every one of his crops, and to tell you the truth, I'm getting damn tired of waiting. And if Carl didn't do something soon, he'd lose a lot more than just his crops. But Kaleb wasn't going to share that with Travis just yet. Until he had the chance to talk to Zoey about it, he wasn't ready to spread the devastating news. Not to mention, it wouldn't matter what he told Travis, because until he had a firm agreement from Carl, none of it mattered. His oldest brother would just get even more pissed off than he already was. Walker Demolition, the company Kaleb and his brothers had built from the ground up, had grown leaps and bounds over the last few years, and instead of being content with what they'd built, Travis was ready to venture in another direction, expand their horizons, he'd said. Instead of focusing solely on tearing shit up, Travis had come up with the idea to build a resort. Not that Kaleb didn't think it was a brilliant idea, because he did. He was just content with the tearing shit up part. The plans he'd seen for a mega resort, the likes of which their small town had never seen, were underway. They'd received the necessary approvals, and now the only thing left to do was to secure the land. Travis had already bought out 2 of their adjacent neighbors, acquiring a good 300 acres of decrepit old farmland, but he hadn't been satisfied with that. Now he was looking for another 100 that backed up to what they'd already purchased. Only this land belonged to Carl Stranford, an ornery old farmer who'd been giving them the runaround for the better part of the last 6 months. Call him. Zane's tone was laced with sarcasm. Or better yet, go see him. Maybe some of your macho intimidation will make him come to a decision. Kaleb groaned. Zane was the youngest of 7, and considering the age difference between him and Travis, he didn't remember much of the Travis they had all grown up with. The fun-loving, hang-on-by-the-seat-of-your-pants guy they'd all wanted to be like. But that man never returned from the 4-year stint in the army. In his place was the grouchy, unsmiling man that sat before them now. I might just do that, Travis snapped before turning and walking out of the room. When the screen door slammed behind their brother, Zane turned to Kaleb. Why don't you go talk to Carl? Or better yet, Zoey. What does Zoey have to do with this? Zane liked to give Kaleb shit about Carl Stranford's only daughter. Not only had she been Kaleb's closest female friend for the better part of the last decade, she was also the woman Kaleb had always wanted, but never had. Despite the ever-present physical attraction, he'd somehow managed to be friends with her without ever trying to push it any further, although he'd wanted to. More than wanted to. Since she'd never shown even an inkling of interest in him other than friendship, Kaleb had opted to take what he could get, and they'd established a very solid friendship. Hell, the woman knew everything there was to know about him, and most of his brothers, yet she still chose to associate with him, so he considered himself lucky. They were infamous in their little town, but that was mostly due to their wild and crazy behavior since about the time each of them could walk. They were a rowdy bunch, and there was a long list of rumors associated with them. Some true, some not entirely true. For whatever reason, Zoey chose to ignore them, and for that, he was grateful. Not that Zoey Stranford wasn't as wild as they came. That was partly what he found so damn attractive about the woman. She didn't care what other people thought about her, and it seemed her one goal was to have fun, and not hurt anyone in the process. So, he'd mastered the art of pretending when it came to Zoey. First and foremost, he was her friend. But that wasn't the problem. His issue was in learning to hide the unbridled lust burning deep and hot for as long as he'd known her. And since his brothers had dubbed her the one woman who wouldn't give him the time of day, they loved to give him a hard time about her. It certainly wasn't a hardship being friends with Zoey, but it had gotten increasingly more difficult in the last few years. Ever since she and that jackass Jason Tribbins divorced, Kaleb did everything he possibly could to make sure he kept his feelings for her hidden. But hell, he wasn't a saint, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could pull off the charade. Zoey doesn't have any say in what her father does with that land, Kaleb added as he watched the wheels turn in Zane's head.